to the 10 Commandments of Synkio panel. So it's great to all be here. All the kind of score of your panels is basically start a panel and then slowly everyone kind of comes in from the other room, so we'll do that here again. Please welcome our two panelists. We're sitting very close to each other, actually. Very close to each other. Listen, very close. On my immediate right, Perreau, who is the CEO of Synkio, and on the right hand side is Tom Cale from Domino Publishing. Please give him a round of applause. How we've been starting all the panels, basically, this time around, is with, I suppose, a bit of kind of career guidance in a way. So let's start with you, Tom. What were you doing, and what have you done before you got to Domino Publishing?
Is this on? Yeah. So I just started out from Brighton originally, which is in the south coast in England, and was just putting on club nights and booking local bands, and then sort of discovered an interest in the industry and went and studied a course at Westminster which was called Commercial Music, and it basically sort of taught you through all of the different sort of areas of the industry. And then in London repeated the sort of promoting shows thing, met a band, was like, right, I've learned a little bit about management on the course, I'm going to tell them I want to manage them and see what happens. And then sort of there was quite a bit of momentum around them, and I was really out of my depth when people started getting in touch. So they went on to become a band called HWCH, and so they got poached off me, as it's called. And then, but from that, I met a load of A&R people and lawyers and booking agents and publishers, and got a job with like scouting in A&R. And then from then, I've moved through a couple of labels and managed some artists independently.
Which labels do you work with, Tom?
I worked at a label called Backyard, which is an indie, and their big key artists were The Gossip, Chromeo, and then I worked at R&S Records for a year and a half, which was like a house and techno label, and then I worked. My first sort of step into publishing was a company called Perfect Songs, which was owned by a record producer called Trevor Horn, and they've got a massive catalogue really, and they just wanted to sort of reinvent the publishing company by bringing songwriters into it, and that's where I learned the publishing way and the creative.
Which bands did you manage, or do you manage at the moment?
So I manage an artist called Only Real, which is signed to Virgin EMI in the UK and Harvest in North America, and another band with Real in it called Real Lies. We're signed to Marathon in the UK, and then some producer DJs, a guy called Happer, who's really young from Leeds, a guy called Airhead, who plays in James Blake's band. A lot of sort of electronic techno stuff that is basically managing their DJ bookings.
So how long have you been at Domino Publishing?
Where are we now? So like coming up to a year.
Okay.
I've worked in publishing for 2.5 years.
Excellent. Okay. So then, like, your CV is really impressive as well. Where did you start out? It's very impressive. Trust me.
Hi, thanks. I run a company called Synkio, which is a music licensing and sync platform, and we kind of bring together two things that I'm kind of obsessed about, which is music and technology. I've always loved those things, so I kind of flunked out of university and found my way into Virgin Radio, where I was a radio producer for a short period. And then I kind of accidentally fell into this job at NME when I redeveloped NME.com. We rebuilt NME.com in 2004.
Accidentally fell into it.
Well, I was actually applying for another job, and then it wasn't until my first day that someone told me that I was the only person on NME.com because they'd fired everyone else. So I had to rebuild the team from scratch. That took us 3 years. And then after we finished that, I went and did strategy at Sky. So I was working with Sky on new launches. So we did about 5 or 6 new launches at Sky, building some new things, doing a few TV pilots, that kind of stuff. And then I did my first startup, which failed miserably. And then I found my way to Global Radio, where I was kind of running the digital department. And Global Radio is kind of this company that owns a lot of the UK's radio business.
Is that what Mark Story done?
Mark Story's done a lot of work with Global. Global owns like Capital and Heart and XFM and a whole bunch of other stations. And then I founded this startup a year and a half ago. And we kind of started taking it seriously once we got to a place which we call product market fit, where people were starting to use it extensively, and that happened in December. And so since January, I've been doing it very seriously. I'm relocating to the States, and we're going to make a real go of it, hopefully. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Synkio to begin with. Then. I mean, there's a quote here in TechCrunch that it tries to take the mess out of the soundtrack mess. So, like, maybe kind of explain, talk a little bit about what it is, what it does, and like how exactly it's solving that particular problem.
So Synkio came about as a result of some conversations we were having with advertising agencies and filmmakers. We were talking to people in those industries, and they were talking about music licensing and sync and how complex they find it, how difficult they find it to get their head around music publishing, and they expressed clear pain about having to use the existing tools and platforms and the way we do it at the moment. So we spoke to them, and we spoke to a whole lot of artists too, who were expressing the same kind of pain about how they do music licensing and sync. It's just a very misunderstood area, and it still remains so. So the goal with Synkio is to take out as much of the kind of process and the kind of pain out of it, so you can focus on making great work, so you can really think about your music a lot more. You know, we take care of all the stuff that's kind of boring admin, like contracts and negotiations and all that kind of stuff. It's a software platform that's pretty self-serve. It's a hand-curated network of about 12,000 musicians, labels, songwriters. We work with lots of big major artists like Moby, Robin, M83, Lionel Richie, Dave Matthews Band. There's a whole bunch of bands that we work with. We're working increasingly with a lot of management companies, some labels too, and we work with all the big advertising agencies in New York, London, Los Angeles. We work with Apple's advertising agency, Media Arts Lab, and they brief us on all of the Apple projects. We work with BPH, Stroke5, the big kind of ad agencies who deal with kind of $500 million plus kind of budgets annually in terms of music. So there's, the music licensing space is worth somewhere. I mean, there's rough estimates about $3.5 billion globally in terms of music licensing. So it's not a small market, and it's the only part of the music business that's actually growing. And so we're focused on trying to make that easier and take some of the stress out of it, so that everyone can do that, more easily with less pain.
From your point of view, Tom, like maybe in the A&R department, like would you be using tools like that, or is it a case of kind of like, you're quite like looking right across the landscape at all these different things, plus you've got your own contacts as well. I mean, where exactly does the kind of, I suppose, the tech side of things that Ben's talking about come in from the traditional like A&R department, like Domino coaching?
Yeah, I think it's really useful, and there's ways of setting up artists now as from an A&R point of view. There's so much more groundwork to do before you kind of look at getting into a playlist on radio or something, and there's loads of different ways of breaking an artist, and these kind of models are becoming more and more common. Like we've just signed a girl called Laura Groves, who we're looking at. She's a kind of Radio 2 singer-songwriter artist that we're kind of looking to break through sync.
Talk a little bit about that though, like Tom, I mean, that particular artist, Laura, how are you going to break what you're saying? I mean, what's the process involved, and how is it different from like the normal way the publishing department work?
Well, it's actually an experiment. We've not done it before, but so she's already had an artist career. She was signed to Excel as an artist called Blue Roses. She's releasing music on a label that doesn't pay any mechanical royalties, because it's like a boutique, small label in London called Deek. And so what we're doing is we're setting up showcases in London at like a really nice space called the October Gallery. It's just her and a grand piano, and she plays 30-minute set to a room of sync people. And it's, you'll know, but like for people that don't work inside the office of the publishing company or the record company or in the management office, the more you can let sync people or anyone involved in licensing feel like they're a part of the artist's career, or that they have a relationship with them, you're going to procure more syncs.
Can both of you use the expression sync people already? Define who these sync people are.
People that make you a lot of money.
Okay, there's a structure that's down Tom Street to make you a lot of money as well. Who are we talking about in this particular space?
I guess there's a range of people who are involved in the kind of sync business.
Music supervisors,
mainly.
So music supervisors is kind of like the middle man or woman between the film company or the advertising agency who they're specialists in finding types of song, or they'll have a knowledge of a certain brief and they'll go, okay, I know that catalogue really well. They'll do what's called a song search, pick a song, and they'll send the ad agency a selection of songs, and they are becoming like some of the most important. They're really important in sync, basically, and a lot of the labels and publishers will have much better relationships with the music supervisors than they will with the ad agencies or production companies.
Do you have anything to add to that list?
No, I mean, they're really important people. We work with a lot of music supervisors. They really care about music. They're doing a different kind of music curation to, say, music journalists. They're thinking a lot about the catalogue. You have to know, music rights can be quite complex, so they know where a lot of the rights are kept. And I guess one of the big differences with Synkio is that we use human expertise on both ends of the platform. So rather than it being a cold library, we just go and do a lot of searching. Everyone has kind of their understanding of different pieces of catalogue, and we kind of bring that collective knowledge to bear, so that people at ad agencies and music supervisors can use the service to try and make it faster and more efficient to find the music that they want to.
Two things on that. One is kind of like the music rights and cleaning up that one. So I want to start first of all with what you raised there, Ben, about the human touch. I mean, obviously a system I think it will be really, really profitable, really streamlined. If you just rely on algorithms only. But in that human touch, is that something that every single person who's using the service wants? That strikes me as kind of almost like impossible to provide.
I really believe in kind of people augmented by technology rather than technology as a replacement for people, and I think the music industry has had that proven to it time and time again. Just using pure algorithms alone, and at the end, people are listening to music with their ears. It's not necessarily the way it works. You look at these algorithm program radio stations. We've still got human program radio stations. In almost every respect, you kind of need those two things together. And the technology helps you manage much larger volumes of music, and makes it much easier for you to get access to theoretically the whole of the kind of global music industry.
Yeah.
But having people on both ends means you can retain some semblance of the expertise that's required. Because ultimately, if you're creating an advert because you want to have an emotional impact on somebody, and that someone needs to kind of carry that emotional impact alongside the visual element of what's going on in the advert. So you need people who can understand what that kind of emotional impact is, and was able to translate it through. Music supervisors are great at understanding that.
Yeah, music supervisors are actually, in a sense, A&R people, because a good example is the John Lewis advert every year in the Christmas advert. Nearly the song chosen always nearly goes to #1, and the music supervisor will do a song search. The record company or a manager, or sometimes it's the supervisor, will have a relationship with the artist that's going to cover a particular song, or the artist that they think is relevant to that time of year, and then the music supervisor will search the song that fits this artist, that fits the Christmas time, that's different to last year, that's telling a new story this year. It's a good, really creative process getting it, and to be getting us, I don't believe that just because it's the John Lewis advert, that's why it goes to #1. It's generally good. Someone's done a good job in making that cover a success.
Ben mentioned there about one of the things that supervisors are really looking for, almost like as a box to tick, and might even go near particular songs, because there's music rights and that side of things. From the kind of publishing point of view, can you talk a little bit, Tom, about that? What rights are we talking about here? Are we maybe talk a little bit through that?
About what?
But like the rights to the song, having the rights to a song, so a supervisor can actually come there in the first place.
Well, everything will need to be registered. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
So for less, for bigger campaigns like John Lewis, for example, you'd expect everything to be registered because that song's going to be very known. But for online syncs that pay less money but very good exposure for artists that are developing, your supervisor could come across your song and be like, oh, this is great, this really fits this, Versace advert online, can we use it? Your manager or your publisher is like, yeah, great, we're on a really strict deadline to use it, and they go and put it over to the ad agency, and it's not registered with CPS or whatever your local collection society is, and it stalls it, and you'll lose the thing.
Is everyone pretty clear on how the kind of headlines of music rights work in terms of knowing what rights you're generating when you're creating music? There are two halves to your music. So when you create a song, you're inherently creating one set of rights, and then when you create a recording, you're creating a second set of rights. So when you do a deal with a publishing company, generally, working with the rights that are not in the song itself, rather than as a piece of intellectual property. And then when you create a recording of that, that's when you tend to work with a label. So when you, for example, with the John Lewis ad, it starts to become slightly more complex. It's a wonderful piece of creative work, I totally agree with you. Because you have to get the rights to the song from the publisher, and then you have to go and record the song again. So it's usually quite complex. And the kind of nuance within that is that if you've had a number of different people involved in your songwriting session, obviously, then you start to get quite complicated, sample
That
rights.
song could be split across 4 different publishers.
Right.
That you then have to go and clear it with. And it can be made a really quick process by having everything registered or having an automatic approval on certain things, or it can be really complicated by not having stuff registered, not knowing who the manager is, and so on.
And knowing that stuff quite often will...
Supervisors will have a knowledge of who's good to do that, and it's to do
So that also kind of means, though, if they have a knowledge of who's good, who knows that, they actually have already limited the pool themselves, so they've kind of filtered the pool, so they're dealing with people that they know, basically can provide information. You talked there, Tom, about a quick turnaround, so basically they're talking about people who've already sorted everything out.
Yeah.
It's much clearer. I mean, if you've got a song that can sometimes be split across 16 different songwriters and 4 different publishers and so on, then you can end up with quite a lot of rights that you've got to go and clear before you do it. When you get lots of people involved in your writing sessions and they all want a point and all that kind of stuff, it starts to get more complex. So it's important to you, I think, as a musician to know where your rights are held, because if somebody comes to you and they're like, we want to sing this track, then you need to know where do you own the master? Have you signed that way? Do you own the song? And who else has a share in that song as well, so that when you redistribute, or when the PROs redistribute, CPS PROs, then you can make sure that they're all signed up appropriately.
Leave the kind of the publishing company aside for a moment. Then, in Can bands who haven't got publishing deals, would they be up to Synkio? Is that something you're kind of is the system made to integrate them as well?
Yeah, even if you don't have a publishing deal, you can still sign up with the PROs, and you can still recoup your royalties. It's just that nobody has given you a publishing advance to then go and recoup. So even without publishing deal, you can sign up for Synkio. Synkio is a hand-curated service, so you go to synko.io/apply, and you can submit your music, and then somebody from our team will go and listen to the music, and we'll create a profile with you if you sort of qualify. And the idea is, we can guide you through the process of registering with PROs if you need help with that kind of stuff. If there's a sync that's going to happen, obviously you want to recoup royalties as well as being able to get whatever front-end money is offered to you as a result of that sync. Because obviously when you're doing a sync, you earn some money we often earn some money through the sync itself in the front, and then the broadcaster or whoever's kind of playing out the advert will then have to pay royalties, and those will get redistributed back to you as the owner of the song.
You talked earlier on there about there's a 3 to 6 billion industries as a part of the music industry. Obviously, let's talk a little bit about the actual money that's available. You were talking before. Maybe one can tell a story you kind of was saying earlier on, about a typical advertiser, or music supervisor, or advertising agency, and how they approach things. Maybe start with that story, and then what we'll do is kind of talk about what Sync can bring into smaller bands, less small bands.
Historically, the way that you might do a sync from the advertising agency's perspective is you'll put a song, as a producer and advertising agency, you'll put a song onto the advert that you're making that you'll then go and use to kind of get the client excited about the piece of work you've created. But often it'll be a very well-known song, and you've probably downloaded it from iTunes, and it's quite likely that you can't afford to sing that song. And the vast majority of use cases that come through from us are, we tried to get this song, we can't get it for whatever reason, either it's a cost thing or it's a permissions thing, whatever happens. So everyone starts up there and they're like, yeah, we want to go and sing Rolling Stones on this. And it's like, so after they've kind of sort of been offered that quite often. They'll have a conversation with someone at a major label, and the major label will then sort of upsell them some stuff that exists elsewhere in the catalogue. And what we're trying to do is get people involved in the process earlier so that they don't have to get too emotionally attached to something that they're able to sync. And also there's a more clear pricing structure so they understand exactly how much they're supposed to pay, rather than somebody coming along and going, hey, I know you had $500,000 to go and sync the Rolling Stones, so how about spending $500,000 to go and sync this band not heard of? And they'll be like, no. And then they kind of feel limited to that selection of music, whereas I guess Synkio offers you a broader selection of music to work with. So we're trying to get people involved in the process early on both sides, so that there's a wider volume of choice available.
And from the kind of, from say, Domino publishing point of view,
Sorry, could you maybe turn around a bit or speak more slowly? I can't hear what you're saying.
Sorry?
I can't make out what you're saying. Could you maybe turn around a bit to this?
So basically, my next question is, in the case of Domino Publishing, right? We haven't got a situation where Lawrence never signed the Rolling Stones, so you haven't got the Rolling Stones publishing. So are you kind of finding music supervisors come to you? Are they more open to kind of like lesser known stuff? are you kind of finding like more bespoke music supervisors are highlighting publishers like Domino and seeing what you've got there?
Yeah, I think so. And it gets, especially since the internet has become, so important into advertising and breaking musicians and artists. There's less money online, and there's the different kind of deals that you can do for like a short-term license for a YouTube stream, or there's just more music that's needed in sync. So yes, the supervisors are coming for, right, you've got this guy that's only released an EP, we've only got 500 quid here, but it's gonna be viewed on YouTube 20,000 times. All of their other videos on their channel have good exposure. The song will be credited, so we'll be like, okay, cool. It's not much money for us or them, but we'll do it because it will potentially help further. We'll give the artist or writer a bit more exposure, and that's kind of like quite an indie publisher's attitude. Whereas you go to a major label publisher, they'll be like, just won't reply to your email if it's 500 quid.
Right, that's like part of the macroeconomic trend of what's going on in advertising. So it's important to understand this because it's where you kind of stand to benefit as a musician. The total volume of media globally is growing exponentially. Like, there's a lot more video, a lot more audio content being created. Think of all the new channels that are existing, like the sort of size of Maker Studios, full screen, all of these big video companies, the total volume of video is growing exponentially. And a lot of that video needs some sort of audio component, whether it be a song or a piece of composed score or whatever that is. So if you think about advertising channels, when an advertiser thinks about their campaign, they're no longer just making a television ad, they're making a lot more online assets. They're making all sorts of different pieces. So there might be sort of 20 or 30 pieces of media that now need to use the same amount of budget that you originally had one piece of media using. So in doing that, there's a larger volume of music that you can then think about in terms of all those different contexts that we're doing, right? So if you do that, there's more opportunity for you to get involved in the sync process earlier on, so you can maybe start to think about syncing your songs, perhaps even with some major brands, which might then get broadcast quite heavily, and you might recoup some nice royalties off the back of that stuff, even if the upfront sync money isn't necessarily huge.
Yeah, great.
I mean, like, I suppose for bands starting out, I'm assuming there's a lot of bands that are also starting out, who have this kind of approaching deal right now, Are there, what kind of, I suppose, advice would you give them if they're approached by a music supervisor looking to use their music? I mean, is that kind of, Tom, is that an example where basically someone like a publisher will come along and go, okay, we'll take care of this? And having worked with bands, having worked especially with syncs as well, what advice would you give them? Would you kind of tell them be careful? Would you tell them to seek out expert guidance first of all, or would you tell them call someone like Tom?
I'd look into kind of what the company that's asking for your music is a bit. If they're like, yeah, it's for this online only usage. Make sure you're finding out exactly everywhere where it's going to be used. If it's online, generally there's not very much money there. So if it's a small sum of money, you kind of, if you feel that it's something quite cool that ties in with your brand, and you see that it's getting a lot of plays, or it looks like it's growing, then if you don't have a manager and you're completely on your own, then you can have a shot at it if it's not very much money. But yeah, you want to make sure that like the term of the license is short if there's not much money involved, so you can kind of test the water with that person. And you want to make sure that they're set up.
When you talk about term there, Tom, like I know every single it varies, but like can you give us an example in terms of like an online campaign only, in terms of term and like the fee as well?
Okay, so a fashion brand that like is kind of something at New York or London Fashion Week wants to use your song for their catwalk, and they're going to upload it to their YouTube channel. This is something quite common where unknown or like developing or coming through artists will get asked their music to be used for. You're going to be looking at about between £250 to £1,500. It'd be online use worldwide for around 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, that's pretty standard. It totally varies, and it totally depends on, whether it totally varies.
You never know sometimes.
Yeah.
Like somebody will come to you with a total low offer, and they'll be
Yeah.
like, yeah, like this is going to get so much exposure, it's crazy, but we want $50 for it.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, what?
Yeah, it totally varies. Like the best thing you can do is do as much research if you're on your own, do as much research into the company as possible, and sort of judge whether you're going to get value out of it on a non-financial level.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you've used the word exposure, and this is something like in young bands or like anyone working in sort of like into relationships very close right now, the cash fees may not be available, but you do have the exposure. But in this case, there are fees available.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some people kind of think like, I'm giving away my song for three years for that much.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So.
I mean, the main thing is you're not giving away your song.
Yeah.
You're just granting somebody a license to use your song in that context for that period. And if you read the contract, it should be clear enough for you to be able to understand that. It's hard for me not to let this develop to some kind of sales pitch, because we built Synkio for this exact reason, because it's kind of scary and painful for a lot of people to kind of get involved in this process. But do read the contract. Was my recommendation.
Yeah, read the contract, and also make sure that if it is a small amount of money, that you're getting your name or your Facebook or Twitter or YouTube link like covered around that. If it is on a YouTube video, make sure that they're putting all of your links, the track title in the description. Even go as far as like making sure that they embed, like they put like a slideshow of the track title at the start of the video, or things like. Just be sort of creative about it and see, right, I can get exposure from this. People are going to be like putting in the comments section, I love this song. People are going to be
Okay. Final question before we throw it out to the audience. Can you give an example, Bodhi, of good syncs you've seen, of situation where like it could be, let's kind of say with new bands, where a sync really worked for that band, and it's a good example, an example you kind of use to other people who maybe be wary about this? Wary or unsure?
Where the band might have been unsure?
No, just give me examples.
Okay, so in England recently, last year, there was a new sports channel introduced, BT Sport, which kind of took over the Sky Sports channel. They were granted the rights to show Premier League football and so on. And there was a band called Django, who had released a record. They were nominated for a Mercury Prize, and a year later, they'd stopped selling. They'd not stopped selling records, but they were out of their album cycle. And this was a music supervisor called Leland's Music, actually, who procured this. And they'd done a sync 9 months after their record, or a year after their record coming out. And because it's like this new sports channel, which all of like football fans, and it's one of the biggest ad campaigns on TV, hearing this song, shazamming it, like, what is this? They'd just instantly done like another 40,000 records off the back of that. That's a guess figure, but they sold a lot more records off the back of doing a big sync a year later.
I mean, I won't talk to one specific example, but if you think about some of the artists who are now, quite wealthy and successful as a result of what were ostensibly Sync campaigns, like the extent to which Moe's campaign was a success as a result of Sync, Fatboy Slim, the extent to which his career was a success as a result of Sync. That Cigarettes track that we all heard a lot of, again and again and again.
Yeah.
And the royalty payments that will come out as a result of that, you don't even necessarily need to sell a lot of records if you can make that part of your career work. And, it's not just about selling records to consumers anymore. It might not even be just about that, So there's a whole bunch of different ways you can approach your career much more holistically now. And I think it helps when there's as much involvement with the artist as possible. Robin did a great advert for Volvo in Sweden earlier this year, where she's a kind of a household name. And she was in the advert as well as providing the soundtrack with a piece of unheard music. And that was a really strong campaign, and it was for Volvo, so it was quite a big deal in terms of the value of the Sync. So.
Fairy Tale of New York is always a big Sync at Christmas, isn't it? It's one of the highest earning songs in the fourth quarter of the year. So just say yes to everything that's relevant to Christmas time and a lot of money.
So that's the kind of like the advice, like write a Christmas song, write a really red nose finger.
Well, we're in October then, so
for next year, 350.
Yeah. Right.
Any questions from the audience? Yep.
Yeah, so if a music supervisor approaches you and says we want to use one of their songs, someone signed to Domino publishing, and you have to go through the clearances, basically you have to get the mechanical license to make sure the work's registered, you organise the campaign elements, everything it's going to include, online, TV, maybe some radio, and they come along and say we want to do it for 3 years. Would you in any stage come in and say, well, we'd rather do a 1 year in the hope that it gains brand recognition, brand association, it's going to be a song maybe people will relate to if it's a big enough company, and then try and negotiate a license the following year with an increase, as opposed to a 3-year blanket license that's going to cover this, whereas maybe the following year they might say, we really like the song, a lot of people respond to this, and we'd rather, maybe you as part of Domino would rather say we'd rather do this for a year, and then the following year come back and maybe
So negotiate the terms.
basically you negotiate the
Yeah,
terms.
you can
rather
always
than say, well,
negotiate it, but if you're going to do a 3-year term, you're going to get a bigger advance on the license. If you're going to do a 1-year term, you're probably going to get a smaller advance on it, and they might not want to use it again next year. So it depends how important the fee is to you, really.
And so that's it. It's a case of would you
Yeah,
necessarily
if you're
always
gonna
look for longer license length? I mean, is that just
If you're going to shorten the length, then they're going to try and pay you less money.
It's about the value of what you regard as a commodity as well. Right?
Yeah.
But is that it essentially? Is it a case of get the longest length for the license as you can, or is it a case of ending and trying something else?
It
Is that
depends
essentially what it is?
on how how well you see the brand that wants to use your music fit with what you're doing. If you're doing something that's less fitting, a lot of people turn syncs down because they're not cool or they don't tie in with what they're doing. But on some exceptions, when a load of money comes along that you can't say no to, that's fine, but we don't want that being used for 3 years. Do it for a year because you don't know where you're going to be in 3 years. You might become this really niche alternative artist that doesn't want their song on a mascara advert or something.
There's creative business decisions to think about when you're approaching that. One of them might be that you think you could do lots and lots of syncs with that track because you feel like it's a really syncable track, and that's where you want it short term because you feel like there's other opportunities down the line. Another one might be that you think that, as you say, they might be interested in a further opportunity because you think this brand might be going somewhere and they might carry your song a little further. There's a few different nuances within that, I think.
Well, things like exclusivity, has that occurred whereby
Consistently.
Yeah, it's there. This is
Yeah,
our
different
song.
territories. If you haven't released your record, say you're an artist that signs to a label in Europe, but you haven't done a North American deal yet, then you might want to keep that territory back in the deal and do a sync in America once your album's out everywhere.
Next question? Yeah.
I'm one from that different aspect. I used to work in sync with
So just email everyone. And even though contact music supervisors, they're really responsive. And if you've worked, it's about having a knowledge of sync and how it works more than like what successes you've had with it in Ireland. But you build contacts.
If you know how social publishing works,
Yeah.
you probably know more than about 50% of the people who work in music publishing.
Yeah.
That is kind of big process. The Dublin market is so small that I think that our experience here might be that hard, even though we're an American company, we're American based. You know, it's just kind of hard to like, transition from the small market of Ireland to the larger market of London, like bigger. Seems to be an issue.
I would go there.
Yeah.
I think if you want to work, I'm finding this, I'm relocating somewhere. I think if you want to work there, you've got to be there.
Every market's different. So it's just, it doesn't mean just because the Irish market's different to the UK, it's not, you're going to be any, it's the fact that you have a knowledge and an understanding of it is what's attractive to publishers. So let them know that you know what you're talking about.
I mean, it's like graduates here. I mean, you get your education here and you move on. It's like when you've kind of got your grounding here, but the jobs have to be in London, New York, or LA.
Yeah, it seems to be there's no publishing, there's no other publishing here. So, BMG is the last one.
I'm sorry that you have to leave Dublin to go and find a job. It's a really nice city.
I don't want to leave.
Okay, any more questions? Aaron again? Short question, maybe?
Yeah, sure, Chris. Challenges that you face, like the main challenges you're going to have are budget and time to get that license and everything like that in the constraint that you have. Is there anything outside of budget and time that has really affected you in the last couple of years? That would affect sync as such? Is there anything that's going outside that?
It's like, for me, it's just time. Like sometimes, you know, we have a massive electronics brand come in and go, right, we've got 3 hours. And it's 11 o'clock at night. And luckily, being a global company, we can canvass responses from people in territories where there are still plenty of managers and people online. But time is the biggest challenge because quite often it'll be very late at night.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, I need something now, like 45 minutes.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised that how often not having the knowledge of how easy it is to clear something will just slow it down. Or, you know, you'll, as a supervisor or a sync agent, you'll be like, right, we've got it, this is perfect. And then be like, right, can't get hold of this person, they're in India on holiday or something, we don't know. But it's just a weird example, but...
Let's kill your whole deal at that point.
Yeah, and you're back to the start.
Is that the reason why sometimes certain bands always kind of feature in things? For example, I remember hearing years ago that who always said yes to everything. So when they always say, if you put an ad and you want some music on, you're prepared to pay for it, who's that beyond? Yeah, they'll sign off on anything.
We've got decision gates on the way, right? It might be what the music supervisor knows, how interested the artists are in that space. I think artists are much more pragmatic about this stuff than they were 10, 20 years ago, you know, so it might be that there's less of a small volume of artists who would say yes to things like single licensing, whereas back then I think it was seen as stop selling out. It was just a really, really taboo thing to do in many ways.
Also, I think a lot of artists now, because of the internet, can have the knowledge of what companies have negatives attached to them, and they don't want to be associated with Mercedes-Benz or whatever it is, so they'll turn it down, and that's good for the supervisor to know, like, you know, what negatives the bands don't want to be associated with.
One more question? Sorry?
How does licensing affect the whole getting, I suppose, clearance and all of that kind of?
In terms of obtaining.
Yeah, if a band have licensed or have signed a licensing deal.
So there's a licensing deal with somebody else?
Yeah, like with a label.
Well, you will need the label's permission quite often if you license your tracks to them, but it depends on which part of the song is being licensed. So if somebody's going to use a song and go make a different recording of it, then the label usually doesn't have any real conversation to be having about because they've already licensed the recording of the track. But if you've got an exclusive publishing deal, you've got an exclusive licensing deal, then they're going to need to be able to feel that they're going to cooperate with you if you get syncs that come along. And there have been examples of people, I wouldn't say that very many people do this, but there have been examples of people who are like, you know, record companies that are obstructive to you really getting what you would get done as an artist. But then the other way around, sometimes they'll find opportunities that you would never be able to find yourself. So I think it goes both ways.
Cool. Okay, please give a warm round of applause to Tom.